So today we will look at the most common mistakes that starting developers make when they do their first project. It is obviously from my experience what I've done and also what I see at my friends doing when they are learning how to do stuff in Roblox Studio. It is not only focused on making the game but also about advertising the game or about their motivation which they constantly lose after making each part of the game. Look at this, you start with your first project and you're extremely hyped up to make a game and earn money from it. But this is actually not how it really works, and you do not know that. Making a game and actually finishing it with lack of skill requires a lot of effort. Even if you might actually get the game done and publish it, you will not like it by yourself. Why? Is because the game will have a lot of bugs and you will be extremely annoyed if you still manage to like your game a lot, even though if it's your first project, and this is actually one of a lot of issues. And I see that at almost everybody. Their first game is one that they never keep on working. And this gets me to another thing about struggling, and that are bugs. You fill the lack of knowledge with a lot of free models from Toolbox. Because the more you know, the less you need to use Toolbox, and the more you can do it by yourself, the custom way you want it, less buggy, and you always know what you're working with. However, if you do not have enough skill to make it by yourself, you just basically take it from Toolbox. Obviously, there are a lot of issues with that. It can be very poorly optimized. It can have a lot of scripts that you don't understand and you cannot customize them however you want. For example, this is really common with, for example, vehicles. Like if you download some free model vehicle, you'll probably struggle to find some configuration for it. Because it really depends on which developer had put it where, and it just gets really annoying. Meanwhile, if you make your own car, you always know what you're doing and where you're putting stuff, so that way it is easily accessible for you. However, it of course takes a lot more time. Now back to the poor optimization, this is really common issues with your first projects. It is because you spam a lot of toolbox stuff and they actually overload your game, making the gameplay either extremely laggy or a lot of chunks of your map will probably not load. And of course, again, the reason behind it is because you lack the knowledge to make the stuff by yourself, so you just fill it with free toolbox stuff, which will make it way less time consuming and requires way less knowledge than to make it by yourself. And I don't mean that you should not use Toolbox, it obviously is very good to make some stuff easier or faster, but you always need to know what you're doing. Because if you don't understand some scripts that you take from Toolbox, and I don't mean scripts by themselves, but for example in some models, then they might cause some troubles. So as long as you know what you're doing, keep using Toolbox. Toolbox is actually great to save some time. Now, another issue I was running into was not knowing how I can do something. This is really common because you just don't know what to do with something. For example, you do not know how to use item properties. You have a spawn location, but you want this spawn location to be invisible. You do not know how to use transparency, so you just try to do it your way. Instead of looking for the transparency property, you will just scale it down to small size. That way, the player will not see that. However, this will cause a lot of issues. Which one of these is finding that spawn later on. Do not try to make it your way or some inaccurate way. It might not pay off later on. People do not know how to do something, they just leave it the way it is and they just give up after like 3 hours of thinking about it and they say, okay, let's just leave it the way it is. Really common as well, but there is always a way how you can make it work. Now another mistake I see a lot is cheap icons or thumbnails. Minor, but it still is an issue. Not too many people actually get attracted to your game if they see a really bad icon, especially if it's supposed to be like the first look at the game from a perspective of new player. This will be all from this video, so I hope you enjoyed it and see ya in the next one.